Last week, we welcomed a group of about 15 to 20 Christian seminarians into the synagogue. I welcomed them into the sanctuary and told them a little bit about how this synagogue came to be, and I showed them the scroll. I explained that we read a section every week, and that this week we would be reading the parasha Bo, in which we find the laws of Pesach. They looked quizzically at me and asked me why we were reading about Pesach in the middle of January, when the festival itself falls later on in the spring. We will read about Pesach again, I said, when the festival comes round. But this is where the story occurs in the book of Exodus, in Parashat Bo, which is our Torah reading for tomorrow. Rashi, in a famous commentary to the very first words of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, asks why the laws of Pesach, the very first set of laws that are found in the Torah, don't occur at the very beginning of the Torah, which is, he implies, after all, a book of law. Instead, here they are, embedded in the second book of the Torah, Shemot, Exodus, interrupting the dramatic narrative of the 10th plague and the exodus from Egypt. I mentioned in my thought for the week today the curious structure of this week's parasha, the pattern of a warning by Moses to Pharaoh about each plague, its execution, Pharaoh's capitulation and then resistance, is repeated throughout the story, before and after each of the first 9 plagues. By the 8th plague, Pharaoh, in his panic, seems ready to let the Israelites go. "I stand guilty before the Eternal One, your God, and before you," he says to Moses, after a swarm of locusts has invaded the land of Egypt, settling as a thick mass, hiding everything from view, darkening the sky, ravaging the grasses of the field and all the fruit trees. But when a strong west wind lifts the locusts and hurls them into the sea, Pharaoh changes his mind and refuses to let the Israelites go. An impenetrable darkness then descends on all the land of Egypt for 3 days, the 9th plague. No one can see another, and so thick is the constant night that people cannot even move from their places. Pharaoh summons Moses and tells him to leave. At last he has relented. But no, he changes his mind, refuses to let Israel go, and declares capriciously and angrily, "Be gone from me, take care not to see me again, for the moment you look upon my face, you shall die." The dramatic escalation of signs from God has led to the present impasse. Pharaoh unwilling to relent, God about to announce the 10th and final plague. But here, the pattern of warning, execution, capitulation, and resistance is paused. God's instructions to Israel to prepare for the exodus from Egypt, the announcement of the killing of the firstborn Egyptians, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, proceeds as before. Even the cattle do not escape the harshness of this plague. But then there is a dramatic change. The sense of foreboding and threat is suspended. The execution of the plague must wait as the Torah departs from its narrative and launches into the set of laws I mentioned earlier about Pesach. There could not be a greater contrast between the signs and wonders that shatter Egypt and the precise, detailed, almost domesticity of these laws of Passover. It is as though God says to the Israelites, you need to create a calendar for yourselves, because I am reshaping time, and I am reshaping you into a people living within the structure of these laws that I'm about to tell you about. This is the month, says God, which will mark the beginning of the Hebrew year. Prepare a nourishing meal for yourself, because you're going on a very long journey. You need to roast a lamb for each household, and if one household is too small, then share it among several households. Take some of the blood of the lamb and daub it on the two doorposts and lintel of your houses. Eat the roasted lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and whatever is left until morning shall be burnt. Moreover, this is how you shall eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it hurriedly. It is a Passover offering to God. And when I go through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both human and beast, I will see the daubed blood on your houses and pass over you, so that no plague will destroy you. In this reshaping of time, you are becoming a people with laws, traditions, and observances, and this day will be remembered for all generations as a sacred occasion, and you will mark it by eating unleavened bread for 7 days and not allowing any leaven in your houses. The Torah here creates a literary and a literal rupture in the narrative, first with the announcement of the 10th plague. The death of the firstborn is a terrible, cataclysmic event. Every single Egyptian household is to be struck down. Poetic justice is complete, as Pharaoh's genocidal decree against all male Israelite children at the beginning of Shemot is punished by this plague. Pharaoh has his comeuppance, to say the least. Theologically, the 10th plague raises many questions about God's justice at this moment of redemption. Was it not enough that the Egyptians suffered 9 plagues, that they had to lose their firstborn, the guilty and innocent alike? Moses, caught up in the confrontation with Pharaoh, is no Abraham arguing with God over the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. What if there are 10 righteous firstborn in the land of Egypt? The breach in the story, the announcement of the plague, the suspense that's created, the laws of Pesach that interrupt the continuation of the execution of the 10th plague, also symbolizes something about the redemption of the Israelites. Redemption cannot occur until there is a timely structure for this rabble of slaves to become a people, a nation, bound together by these laws, traditions, teachings, observances, culture of Judaism. It is as though God says to Israel, your survival, your adaptation to the world, your very existence, your freedom, your faith, is to be built on these things that bind you together as a people. In the grandeur and terror of this story, in the easy domesticity of eating unleavened bread, in the obligation of passing our heritage on to the next generation, whether our own children or the children of others, we cannot look beyond a world of autocratic leadership, beyond the flight of refugees and asylum seekers, beyond the suffering that is the cost of liberation, beyond loss, until we have a world order built on justice, on resistance to injustice, on responsibility, duties, and rights. Only then, when the old order is cast away, when we take ourselves out of a narrative of unbounded power and cruelty and commit ourselves to this structure symbolized by the laws of Pesach, can we begin to build a society, a world in which there are glimpses of redemption.